Hi, good morning. I am very excited and happy to be with all of us today at this year's edition of Google I/O Extended. It's a pleasure to be with everyone, and I'm happy because I'm going to be talking about a parts of industry in tech, and I'm very happy and thrilled to be part of and talk about every single time. My name is Trust Onyekwere. I currently work with the DevRel team at Bond to support developers in Web3 space to build better solution and of course understand what Web3 actually means and to get started with Web3 without much hurdle. And that is why today I'm going to be talking about the subject that drives my desire to help everyone who wants to come to Web3 to understand better. But today we're going to look at web developers, front-end developers. How can front-end developers begin to get into Web3 and what is needed for them to do and how they can begin to navigate into the to take the jump to becoming Web3 people from front-end development background. So we're going to look at this is what we're going to cover, right? So the first thing we're going to look at is what are the skills needed as a front-end developer to begin with front-end development in the first instance? So this is actually for those who are beginners who are coming to start web development careers and want to begin from front end. So what do you need to get started with quickly? What can you begin to learn to become a front-end person? And this is also the second thing we're going to learn for those who are already front-end developers and those who are looking to have more a skill experience, just what they can learn to strengthen their front end development offering, and of course, begin the position to get into Web3. So, talk about libraries, programming languages, frameworks that are easy to use to navigate to the Web3 industry and Web3 world. The stuff I'm going to talk about is about since we've learned the languages, the libraries, we're now front-end persons, how can we make the jump to Web3? What are the sweetest, not really sweetest here, but what are the easiest way or the more smooth path to take to come to Web3? And so how can you begin to build front-end solutions, but this time around that suits the Web3 ecosystem and begin to become a Web3 developer with a front-end background that is becoming a Web3 front-end developer. We're going to look at what tools are available out there to make the experience easy for developers to begin to build Web3 solutions easily. And of course, without, breaking much sweat and learning entire, things from scratch. What are tools that make it easy to quickly set up your environment, quickly build and quickly interact with smart contracts without entirely knowing much things? Of course, you have to know a few things, but what is the easiest part to take? Not easiest, may not really be easy in terms of learning, but easier in terms of what is like the most better path to take if you want to tools to use if you want to become a front-end developer from the Web3 space. And of course, once we learn, we need to apply. So how can we quickly apply, our front-end development skills in Web3 by getting jobs? So look at where can we find Web3 front-end jobs or Web3 jobs in general, and what kind of jobs are likely to be out there for developers who want to get into Web3. So let's get started. Getting started, I would like to talk about this. What you see on the screen is a very valid reminder for everybody who writes code, especially web developers. The misconception is Web3 is so complicated that it's an entire different world altogether. And it's me saying that you do not have to drop everything Web2 to come into Web3. You can still use your skills in Web2 to come to Web3. We're going to see why that is so by breaking down the key concepts of what Web3 actually is and understanding why we say you don't need to drop Web2 to come into Web3. All right, so you don't need to like drop all you have, the skills you have in Web2 to become a Web3 person. You can still leverage and climb on your existing skill set in Web2 to, of course, begin to know how you can, use that skill set easily, quickly, and definitely become a Web3 person. And why I say that, misconception is that Web3 is like a different world altogether. And so you're looking at, how can I make a switch? How can I stop Web2 and go to Web3? You can't stop Web2 to Web3. You can only leverage on Web2 to come to Web3. And it is almost the same thing. Like this is like a typical, what you see on the screen, a typical web development flow. As a backend, as a front end, and as a link between both of them, API, JSON files, right? Just like the link between both of them. And you can also become a full stack person if you know how to do back end, front end, and of course the rest. It is same thing with Web3, right? Web3 still has a front end. It still has, in Web3 applications, still have a front end. It also has a back end, and it has smart contracts and API driven smart contracts that can, merge them together. And you can become a full stack Web3 developer by doing the back end smart contracts, applying them to the front end and linking them together. So the same, skills, the same, structure you have in Web 2, it's almost a similar structure you have in Web 3. So that's why I say that you should not entirely drop Web 2 to come to Web 3. You can leverage on using knowledge and skill sets in Web 2 to quickly and easily build on Web 3 skills. So this is the very key, very important question to ask. What is Web3 anyways? We've heard about the hype, the buzz about Web3, developers are making the switch. What is Web3 exactly? So this is the where we're going to answer what Web3 is. If you ask a lot of Web3 developers this question, you probably if you ask 10 Web3 developers this question, it's likely you're going to get 10 different answers because everyone has different definition of what Web3 is. But for the context of a conversation, this is the most simpler way to put it what Web3 is. It is simply a decentralized internet where no one has control. Web 2 is definitely, no one has co control in Web 2 is being given by the platform, that is the internet is being relied on. So Facebook, for example, doesn't have the ability to give the users the control over their data. That's why I see different privacy issues, people selling data without your consent. And so these are different issues we have with Web 2. Web 3 is trying to say that, okay, we've seen how Web 2 works. Our data is being, used without our consent, and data is likely the privacy for data is low, and so there's like issue for Web 2. Web 3 is trying to say in this new version of the web, that is not possible. No one has control over your data. You put up your content, you are the one who have control over. No one is actually controlling the data. There's no middleman, there's no master over data on the platforms. Sorry, so that is the key definition of what Web3 is. It's a new kind of internet where no one has control over anyone's content. And so just like we have version 1, version 2, the second version of Web, which is Web 2, content is being, as privacy of content, as privacy violations, different things happening with data. But now the upgraded version of Web, which is Web 3, has more secure outlook for data, and no one gets to manipulate or use your data without your consent. So no one has control over data. That is what Web 3 is. Now, interesting part about this is that for this to happen, it's being powered by a technology called blockchain. And of course, blockchain too has its own definition. So if you ask, 10 blockchain developers what blockchain is, you're also going to get 10 different answers. But for the context of a conversation, blockchain simply can be said to be a chain of blocks that contain information. So information are linked together in block forms, and information is being passed from different place to another. So you know how chains are like being interlocked together, chains. So you cannot easily detach without spoiling the rest of it. So any information you want to take out of one of the chains or one of the blocks in the chains will automatically, affect other blocks in the chain. So blockchain is a chain of blocks that contains information. Now, it gets interesting because this kind of technology, blockchain, is intended to timestamp digital documents. That is why we say Web3 is impossible to tamper with data, and blockchain makes that possible. By having timestamps on digital documents, digital media, that makes it impossible to be tampered with. You can't backdate it, you can't fraud it, you can't manipulate it without any other person in the chain knowing about it. Because if you detach one block of chain from a normal chain, other chains are being disrupted, other chains are being affected. Everybody knows something's being wrong from this chain. So the same thing with the digital blockchain we have, right? It is impossible to tamper because all of them are linked together. One attempt to change one will affect the rest, and so transparency is being advocated largely on the blockchain. The blockchain application beyond just, of course, we see applications with money NFTs trying to buy cryptocurrencies, a cryptocurrency for money, digital currencies trying to sell, currencies and all those things, cryptocurrency. Is also what is powering NFTs, properties, right? So we cannot NFTs, as we know, is non-fungible tokens, which means is unique. You can't find a duplicate in the market, like it's just one unique. And that is what helps to prevent fraud against selling multiple fakes in the market. So that is what powers NFTs. And same thing with smart contracts, digital contracts. So I've signed a contract with somebody, I go to change the date and tamper. With digital smart contracts, blockchain, it's not possible. So like we said, any change is impossible to tamper. So anything that's on the chain cannot be changed. And this actually makes it secure and a more, bulletproof, internet, as we can call it that, right? Because nobody can easily hack it. It can fraud hardly happens because it's all transparent and nothing really can be tampered with. So all these things are what Web3 is all about, a more secured version of the internet powered by the blockchain. Now, how can we build for Web3 and the blockchain? So we said that, of course, Web3 is trying to be, like the new phase of the internet, and we've always been building apps on the Web2, on the internet that had powered by Web2. Now, how do we now move further to now support Web3 space and build for Web3? That's the question. We've understood what blockchain is and how it's being powered, how it powers Web3. Now the question now comes, how do we now build for Web3? Well, as we all said that you have to leverage on your Web2 skills to do better in Web3. And of course, the basis of the web is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So if you are a beginner that wants to start, you definitely got to start from this. If you're already an expert in HTML or front-end development, then you have to strengthen your skills in JavaScript and of course design parts, HTML and CSS. You could now, add a little bit taste for your skills by even TypeScript, especially if you are going to React as a front-end framework with JavaScript. Once you're done, you could choose React, Vue, or Angular to become a complete front-end, stack for Web 2. Again, I would like to emphasize that for you to go to Web 3, you have to get strengthened in your Web 2 skills. From that, you can begin to build for the front end part of the Web 3. That's the front end. Now, what about the back end? Well, the back end for Web3 looks like this. Either you go learn programming language called Rust to build for Solana chain, right? So there are different kinds of um, blockchain available that help developers to build upon the chain. So Solana is one of them. So you have to learn Rust to be able to build on this Solana chain. Perhaps you could also learn, Solidity for the Ethereum chain. So these are different blockchains they can use to build upon, and different language supports both of them. So if you want to build for Ethereum, you have to go to learn Solidity and build smart contracts, that run on the Ethereum blockchain. But if you want to build for Solana blockchain, you have to go learn Rust as a programming language. So that's for those who want to build smart contracts and become backend engineers in the Web3 space. But of course, our interest today is for front-end developers. So you have to learn this first. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, TypeScript, React, Vue, Angular, or Angular, any of these framework is fine, it can do, and you can become strengthened in Web3, sorry, in Web2 rather. Now, if you want to go become a full stack or to try to be a backend person to build smart contracts, you want to build on Solana blockchain, you have to go to Rust. You want to build on Ethereum blockchain, you have to go to Solidity, right? So that's the backend part for smart contracts, building on top of the Web3. Now, how do we now still be a front end developer, but trying to, consume smart contracts on your front end? Just like we have the usual, consumption of APIs given by the back end people in normal Web 2 space, we can still consume smart contracts being developed by back end people in our front end applications. So how can you do that? This is actually where you can now begin to move to Web 3. Once you've learned this thing, you cannot call yourself a Web3 front-end developer because you could build the applications and can use smart contract and make it a decentralized application called dApps for short. So the first is libraries. You get to, learn any of these libraries. Web3.js or 8000.js. These are two libraries you can use to build, to interact with smart contracts on the front end. They all have the different components, but 8000.js is one of the most popular and is better than Web3.js. Why? We're going to see why. The first is that it's much smaller and less bulky. It's lightweight. You can easily get started with it ASAP. Documentation is quite better. Yeah, the documentation is quite better. And so documentation in a case where different people are trying to come up with different ways to make it better, right? Resources to learn, a different, frequently asked questions. People are actually documenting and contributing to better documentation for ASA.js, and it's more popular. Hence, open source in a way people get to apply, add new changes, and get to make it better. Beginners find it easier to get started with because, like I mentioned, it's more popular because of the friendliness it is, lightweighted. There are different resources out there to learn about it, YouTube videos, documentation, articles, and all those things. It has extra features, more like boilerplates in a way that makes certain things easier for you to do writing code, outrightly for them. So all these are the reasons why um, Ada.js is one of the best library to use when you want to consume smart contracts or begin to have smart contracts, smart contract like activities on your front end applications. The second tool and platform, sorry, is called Alchemy, right? Alchemy looks like this. It is a collection. I like to see as a collection of different SDKs, of different tools, different services you can use to build dApps. dApps are decentralized application for short, right? dApps, blockchain applications. It has a pricing, like there's SDKs, there are, different APIs, different products you can use to do what you want to do in a one line, magic lines of code to supercharge your development, with different powerful blockchain development platforms and all those things. So just use Alchemy if you're looking for already made certain features, SDKs you can use to easily build and begin to develop Web3 solutions ASAP. The second is Remix. Remix is a tool, it's like an online editor IDE for deploying and building smart contracts. It is for the Ethereum blockchain. So you could easily get a remix to teach online about smart contract or to use it in your own to practice smart contracts. You can download the files, you can upload new files, you can just push to GitHub. It's like online workspace to build and deploy smart contracts. Other one is called truthful. So for those who may not entirely like Remix, I want to have like a more local environment for building, Ethereum environment for building smart contracts via VS Code, for example. A truffle is another another tool to use. You could install on your you can install it on your VS Code, to simplify debugging, deploying, and building of smart contracts. There are other tools inside TOEFL that make smart contracts building simpler for Ethereum Virtual Machine, the EVMs. There is one-click blockchain for certain desktop application for command lines to make it deployment easy. Or call, you can see it down called Drizzle. So it's like it's a fresh chain data for front ends. So if you could take a look at the GitHub repo, the docs, it just makes development of smart contract a lot easier on your local environment if you don't want to use Remix. Another is hard hat. Hard hat for me is like the refined way, it's like updated part of truffle. People like hard hat better because it's a lot easier. It's flexible and extendable for different use cases, and you can still install in VS Code, run the npm for other packages that also connect to hard hat. You just go to hardhat.com, just browse Google Hard Hat, you get to see the website, download the plugins, watch tutorials, and see how you can use it easily. So if you're already familiar, like that's why I said there are people who actually moved to Web3 development without doing Web2. In the case HTML, CSS, JavaScript, they are going to suffer because you still have to come back to learn the basics. It's still the web. The web is made up of it's still HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for most of the parts of it, right? And we're talking about Web3. The web is still there, just the three is added to show how secure it is by blockchain. So we still have to go to learn the other, you know, go to learn things like the normal Web 2 things, HTML, JavaScript, React, or Angular, as the case may be, to strengthen Web 3 to Web 2. So once you know that, it's easy for you to find other libraries like Hardhat, Truffle, to add to your development workspace to build smart contracts all together. So once you find tutorials, it's easy for you to know how to work around that and find use cases to make your work a little bit, not a little bit, but clearly simple and to work with that. The last is bonds. In my dictionary, the last is bonds. Bonds help people to build Web3 applications easily and faster. If you're a front-end developer, you have two options. Either go and learn Rust to build for Solana, or go and learn Solidity to build for the Ethereum blockchain, or you use bonds. Three options. Of course, front-end developers would love to stick to front end and not go to back end. And Bonds makes that possible. So Bonds is like a smart contracts as a service platform where there are templates already used, for before I go into the templates on, we all familiar with Firebase. As an Android engineer and a developer for many years ago, Firebase saved my life in building, full stack applications for Android. I had an option to go and learn Node.js or Django to build REST APIs for authentication, storage, and all those other backend stuff. I don't have the muscle for that. Firebase saved me big time. You just go to Firebase, start a library, you know, for um for the Android Android Studio library. Just put it there. Install a few things to install. Select the service you want to use, authentication, Firestore, what else is there? Okay, now MLKit is also available for machine learning, applications. So you can easily do that without entirely going to having a backend developer do stuff for you. The same thing happens with bonds. It's like the Firebase for blockchain backend. So you could go and learn Solidity or go and learn Rust to build smart contracts, or you could skip that process and use bonds to do it quickly. So bonds has different smart contracts, a combination for different use cases. For NFT marketplaces, smart contract already made for it. There is ICO, initial coin offering, there's a tokenization, you want to create your own cryptocurrency, you want to go transaction wise for decentralized finance, whatever use case you're looking for, Bonds likely has a smart contract template for it. I think they added an edit button where you can just add a few other functionalities you want to your smart contract. So it's easy, just download the Bonds SDK, match it to your application, React, Vue, plain what's called a vanilla.js, just make it make sense. It is heavily for the Ethereum blockchain, supports Ethereum, compatible blockchains like the BSC and the Asta and Polygon also. So you can just take a look at that. So these are the platforms and tools that, from my research, makes it easy as a front-end person to build for Web3 space. So you can become Web3 developer with these tools: Ether.js, Bonds, Hard Hats, Alchemy, and Remix. With this, you can easily begin to use your Web2 skills to become and go into Web3 and of course dominate the space and begin to apply for a job and easily call yourself Web3 developer. So I would like to emphasize it once more that you do not need to drop Web2 to become a blockchain developer, Web3 developer. It doesn't mean you have to drop everything Web2. Web3 is still built upon Web2 technologies. The only difference, of course, we've seen that Web 2 is not secure as much as Web 3 is. So that upgrade now has new technologies like Solidity, Rust, ASA.js, and other things that comes with it that make development on Web 3 and the blockchain a lot easier, right? So you still have to maintain your existing skills in Web 2 and come to Web 3 to make it make sense. And you can decide to go full stack by building smart contracts and consume them on your front end, or use tools like Bonds to quickly skip that process and just pick SDKs and smart contracts to build on your front end and become Web3 developer by building dApps and blockchain applications. Once you've done learning, I mean, of course, you want to learn, so we're not done learning. So these are tools, channels on YouTube that makes it easier for you to learn. It's like my top six on YouTube. Dabbit is of course my number one guy. Dabbit three for his YouTube channel, Programmer Smart YouTube channel, Clever Quasi YouTube channel. You could just browse this on Google, of course, search on YouTube different Web3 development tutorials free of charge. I think Free Code Camp also has some some lessons and some videos on Web3. But these are channels that focus solely on Web3 and blockchain. Go through that, you get to learn new things and make it make sense for you and begin to apply and and build projects and products. Eventually become an expert in Web3 as a front end person. So we're done learning, we have to get jobs, right? So these are where you could get jobs. So jobs are one of the application, one of the ways to apply your skills in Web3. And remoteok.com makes sense. You go to web3.career, remote3.co, cryptojobleads.com. These are places where you can find jobs for Web3. It's good to note that you must not entirely get into Web3, get a job in Web3 as a developer. Web3 is sweet that it has different roles for different parts as a developer. You could become a developer community manager for Web3. You could become Web3 technical writer for developers, in Web3 space. You could become a developer advocate. You become, you could just become different things as a developer because you understand to write code. So you must not entirely apply for development jobs. You could also apply for jobs that still, revolve around the development space like developer relations, technical writing, so the community management for developers, still using your existing skills and helping people. Of course, that's a job that can also be well paid as well. So we've discussed a lot about, getting Web3. It shouldn't be technical. I mean, the hype has been so much intimidating that people begin to make it so complex and talking about different, slangs and different jargons. It's not rocket science. Web3 is a more secured version of Web2, which is powered by blockchain. To become a Web3 person, you have to learn how to be for blockchain. We have two options. Stick to front end in Web3 or go to backend, become a full stack person. Backend means go to learn Solidity and routes and kill yourself there with all those plenty complexity to build smart contracts. Or you can stick in your front end, but look for other tools and platforms that make it easier for you to still build upon smart contracts and launch application like Bonds and Alchemy and the rest of them. So this is as much as I can take today. So thank you guys for listening, and I really hope that we make the shift, not shift, but like for those who want to make the shift, that's fine. No one should pressure you to become a Web3 person if you don't want to become a Web3 person. But take a look at that industry and see how you can contribute with them, still leveraging your Web2 skills. So my name is Onyekwere. Thank you very much for listening, and I get, hopefully we just get to apply what we've learned. You could drop your questions. I could try my best to answer if I am on the live chats via Google Meet. Thank you guys very much. So you could actually connect with me on I am Tija. I heavily help Web3 developers on a Discord channel for bonds called bonds.dev. Sorry, my picture is covering the link. So it's called bonds.dev. So you can meet me there and other Web3 developers trying to learn together and trying to build applications on the blockchain and in Web3. Thank you guys, and hopefully you enjoy yourself and have a very awesome IO extended 2022.